Okay, let's dive in. We're unpacking something huge today. Arguably, the biggest shift in how organizations work, really. It's this fundamental move where the power balance is flipped. It's not the employer holding all the cards anymore. It's the employee. That old phrase, the war for talent. Well, it feels like it's over, and talent definitely won.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's not just a catchy phrase. It's the reality now. It means leaders, organizations, they have to completely rethink things. It's not just about adding a few perks to attract people.
Right? It's deeper than a better coffee machine or, ping pong
It's
tables.
way deeper. It's about strategy. It demands a whole cultural overhaul. If you want the best people, the real top talent, you have to earn them, earn their commitment, their ideas, their loyalty, and not just once, but like every single day.
Exactly. So that's our mission for this deep dive, right?
Yeah.
To figure out what effective leadership looks like now. When your best people are basically choosing to partner with you, not just work for you. We're going to pull together ideas from, well, all over. Ancient philosophy, military strategy, modern corporate culture. See if we can find a kind of blueprint.
A blueprint for building an environment where talent genuinely wants to be, where they can thrive.
Yeah. And maybe start with why this is happening now. What's changed in the world?
Okay, yeah. The context is crucial. The operating environment, it's just objectively way less predictable than it used to be. And that's not just a feeling, it's systemic. Think about increasing complexity, everything being interconnected globally,
Uh-huh.
and maybe surprisingly, this relentless drive for efficiency.
Ah, efficiency. That's like the holy grail for most businesses, isn't it? Cut costs, streamline everything, maximize profit. So how does that make things less predictable or maybe more fragile?
Well, Nassim Taleb talks about this. He calls that extreme focus on leanness the beastly thing called efficiency.
Hmm.
Because when you push systems right to the edge, like just-in-time supply chains or hyper-specialized roles, maybe relying on just one supplier for a critical part.
You're cutting out all the buffers, all the slack.
Exactly. You're prioritizing immediate profit over any kind of redundancy. You're building a system that's optimized for perfect conditions.
And perfect conditions. Well, they don't last. So what happens when that super efficient system hits a bump, a random shock, like, I don't know, a pandemic, a ship stuck in the canal?
You get what Taleb calls an acute negative convexity effect. Basically, the whole tightly wound system becomes only as strong as its absolute weakest point, a tiny failure somewhere. A port shuts down, a key supplier has an issue. It doesn't just cause a small problem, it can cascade, have this massive, disproportionate negative impact across the whole global setup.
Because there's no margin for error.
None. We've basically engineered fragility into the system in the name of efficiency.
Okay, so if the system itself is inherently brittle, unpredictable, then the only thing that can really cope, the only thing that can maybe even benefit from that chaos, has to be the people within it.
Precisely. That's the key insight. This kind of environment demands adaptable, resilient, creative people. Talent who can, roll with the punches, figure things out on the fly, operate without needing constant direction. They become the essential shock absorbers.
So the complexity itself forces empowerment.
It necessitates it. You simply have to trust your talented people to make important calls in real time because things are moving too fast. The old command chain often can't keep up with the speed of events. Empowerment isn't just nice to have, it's a functional requirement.
Okay, so if we need these empowered, self-starting people, then the old way of managing,
Yeah.
it just doesn't compute anymore, does it? We got to talk about that lingering ghost, Theory X.
Ugh, Theory X. Yeah, Douglas McGregor nailed this one. It's that really corrosive underlying assumption that most people just fundamentally lack ambition. The theory goes, people dislike work, they avoid responsibility, they aren't very creative, and so you basically have to make them do what the organization needs, force them.
And if you start from that place, your whole management style just flows from it. It becomes about direction and control.
Absolutely. It's the bedrock of coercive management. You get intense measurement, tight controls. McGregor talked about using the needle constantly, keeping people on their toes out of fear. It treats people like, well, cogs in a machine, interchangeable parts that only move when you push them.
But we just established that in this complex, fragile world, we don't need cogs. We need navigators, problem solvers.
Exactly. And you can't coerce ingenuity. You can't force resilience. It just doesn't work. So the successful modern organization has to flip that script entirely.
How do they view their people then?
They embrace this new idea, this new covenant. You treat employees like volunteers. Stephen Covey really drives this home with his PPC balance concept.
PPC, production versus production capability.
Yes. Production. The PA, that's the output, the result you want right now. The golden egg, as the fable goes.
Yeah.
Production capability, PC, that's the asset that produces the result. The goose that lays the golden egg.
And in this context, the goose is your employees, your talent.
Exactly. And the PC principle, applied to people, demands something radical compared to theory X. It demands that you treat your employees precisely how you'd want them to treat your absolute best, most valued customer.
Because effectively, they're choosing to be there. They're volunteers in the enterprise.
That's the core. Covey was really clear on what you can and can't actually buy from an employee. You can buy their time, you can buy their physical effort, their hand or their back, he says.
Okay, basic compliance.
Right. But you absolutely cannot buy their heart. You can't purchase enthusiasm, loyalty, genuine commitment.
And you definitely can't buy their brain.
No way. You can't buy creativity, ingenuity, resourcefulness, that ability to solve novel problems. These things, the most valuable assets in today's world, the things that let you navigate complexity, they are given freely or not at all.
They depend entirely on the employee choosing to engage, choosing to commit.
100%.
This really shines a light on why that old macho management style fails so badly now. You know, the aggressive short-term focus, the drop hand grenades kind of approach.
Oh, completely. That style is pure P-focus. All about the immediate numbers, the short-term win, the golden egg right now. But it does it by sacrificing PC, by sacrificing the goose.
You burn people out, you destroy trust.
You get high turnover, people calling in sick, disengagement, lost creativity because people feel disrespected, used, exploited. If that emotional bank account with the employer is empty or overdrawn, the very best you can possibly hope for is what Covey called malicious obedience.
Malicious obedience. That sounds chillingly accurate for some workplaces. What does that look like on the ground?
It's the ultimate form of checking out while still being physically present. It's when an employee does exactly what's in their job description, follows instructions to the absolute letter, but takes zero initiative, zero ownership for the actual outcome. They won't flag a problem, won't suggest an improvement, won't help a colleague unless explicitly told to.
They just follow the script, even if they know the script leads off a cliff.
Precisely. Well, you told me to do X, so I did X. They're mentally gone. And that's the huge, often hidden cost of sticking with Theory X thinking in a world that demands Theory Y engagement.
So this need for empowered, self-directed work, for environments where people can actually use their full capabilities. It taps into something pretty deep, doesn't it? Philosophically, even.
Absolutely. You can trace it back. Think about Emerson in his essay Self-Reliance. He talks about man as his own star. Genius, he argues, is believing that what's true for you in your own heart holds a universal truth.
And talented people today are driven by that kind of impulse.
I think so. They seek mastery, they seek autonomy. They'll naturally look for environments where they aren't, as Covey puts it, scripted deeply, where they're trusted to navigate, to use their own judgment.
This demand for respect, for being treated as more than just a pair of hands, it also echoes some really old ethical discussions about power, doesn't it? I'm thinking of Cicero.
Yeah, Cicero's On Duties. It's fascinating how relevant it still is. He talks about conferring favors, about building relationships. He observes that people often favor the rich or powerful, expecting a quick sort of transactional return on their kindness.
Like networking almost.
Kind of, yeah. But Cicero argues that's short-sighted. He says if you show genuine kindness, confer a real favor on a poor but good person, someone of integrity, that person will remember it faithfully. Because they received it as a true act of goodwill, not just a calculated move.
Whereas the powerful person might just assume they're doing you the favor by even accepting your help.
Exactly. They might expect deference just based on their status, not their actual character. Cicero's takeaway is profound. The decisive question when choosing who to partner with shouldn't be how rich or powerful are they, but what sort of a man is he? What's their character?
And you're saying top talent today applies that same standard to their employers. They're assessing the company's character.
I believe they are. They're looking beyond the paycheck. They're assessing the integrity of the leadership, how the company treats its people, its partners, its customers. Does it have a purpose beyond just profit? They are, in essence, looking for a good man, a good organization that they can choose to serve faithfully, to volunteer their best efforts for.
Okay, so if talent is conducting this kind of character assessment, then the mindset of the leader becomes absolutely critical. It's a huge shift. Leaders need to understand their job isn't necessarily to be the smartest person in the room.
But to fill the room with people smarter than they are.
Exactly. And we see this play out in the stories from the early days of Pixar, right?
Yeah.
With Ed Catmull's hiring decisions.
Yeah, that's a fantastic example of confident leadership in action. Catmull talks about meeting Alvy Ray Smith at NYIT, and he felt that immediate sharp pang of, well, professional threat. He realized Alvy might actually be more qualified to run the lab than he was.
That's a tough moment for anyone's ego. What did he do?
He hired him immediately because he understood that to build something truly excellent, he needed the absolute best minds he could find. And that meant, as he put it, learning to put my own insecurities away.
That's huge, because the temptation for a lot of leaders is to hire people who are maybe slightly less capable, people who won't challenge them, people who just confirm their biases.
Right, and that just stunts everyone's growth. The leaders, the teams, the whole organizations. Catmull found that when he ignored that fear, the fear of being overshadowed or replaced, it turned out to be baseless. He grew immensely as a leader by having someone like Alvy there. And the lab thrived. His rule became always take a chance on better, even if it seems threatening.
Because the upside innovation, excellence, your own learning, is just so much greater than the perceived risk to your ego.
Precisely.
So this shift from insecure leadership to confident talent stewardship, it connects directly to this idea of being a multiplier leader, doesn't it?
It really does. Liz Wiseman's work on multipliers versus diminishers is key here. A multiplier operates on a fundamentally different assumption than that old theory X manager. They start by assuming that intelligence, capability, genius, it's not just concentrated at the very top, it's distributed throughout the organization.
So their job is to find that genius and amplify it.
Exactly. Whereas the diminisher, consciously or unconsciously, believes they are the genius and everyone else is just there to execute their brilliant ideas, they often end up shutting down talent.
How does a multiplier practically work with a team, especially one with varying levels of skill or experience?
They have to work the extremes. It's not just about managing the average. They need to identify the lowest lows, where's performance lagging, what roadblocks exist, and actively work to bring that baseline up. Coaching, mentoring, removing obstacles. But, crucially, they also have to focus on the highest highs, the real stars, the geniuses. They need to challenge them, give them space, give them bigger problems to solve, help them reach that next level of achievement.
Not just leave them alone because they're already good.
Right. That's how Pixar, back in the NYIT days, Catmull describes, could use that incredibly flat structure. They gave immense freedom to highly motivated, brilliant people. The structure wasn't there to control them. It was there to enable their self-management, their genius, and that led to huge leaps forward.
Okay, but that kind of high freedom, high expectation environment, it seems utterly dependent on really honest, open communication, unvarnished truth.
Absolutely. Which brings us to the need for radical candor. And this is tough, really tough, especially for leaders who are used to being in control or always being right.
Candor takes humility, right? Both giving it and maybe especially receiving it.
Tremendous humility. The anecdote about Pixar's note stay is just stunning in this regard. This was a company-wide voluntary feedback session, and the leadership team received, I think it was 2.5 pages of incredibly direct, tough feedback aimed squarely at John Lasseter, the chief creative officer.
Wow. 2.5 pages on one person, a founder no less.
Oh.
What were people saying? Was it just complaining?
No, that's the interesting part. It wasn't just personal attacks. It was focused on structural issues and observable behaviors. People were concerned about him splitting his time between Pixar and Disney Animation, feeling it diluted his focus. But the really specific point was about emotional leakage.
Emotional leakage, what's that?
They pointed out that he would often carry the negative emotion from one tough meeting directly into the next unrelated meeting. So people in that second meeting would feel like, why is he upset with us? When his mood actually had nothing to do with them. It was creating uncertainty, maybe even fear, undermining psychological safety.
That's a classic leadership blind spot. So how did Lasseter react to having this pointed out so publicly?
His reaction was everything. It was the pivot point for their culture of candor. He stood up, acknowledged it, and said, essentially, this hurt, but it was so valuable.
Yeah.
He didn't get defensive. He owned it. And crucially, he visibly worked on changing those behaviors afterward. That act, that vulnerability, made it safe for everyone else to speak up. It validated the entire process.
So the value wasn't just the specific feedback, but the modeling of how to receive it.
That was the biggest win. It permanently shifted the culture towards making it okay to voice uncomfortable truths, regardless of hierarchy.
In this humility, this willingness to face uncomfortable truths, it has to extend beyond just personal feedback, to, like strategic mistakes too, right? Like when Pixar looked at why The Princess and the Frog didn't perform as expected.
Yes, exactly. Catmull talks about this. The animation itself was beautiful, technically brilliant. But the film underperformed. They had to confront the fact that they'd focused so intensely on the internal execution making a great film that they'd kind of ignored the external context, the positioning, the marketing, how it fit in the market.
They got caught up in their own bubble.
A bit. They realized they hadn't listened carefully enough to experienced colleagues outside the core creative team whose opinions maybe contradicted their own internal excitement. The learning was that quality isn't just the product itself. It's also about understanding the audience, the market, and being open to reasoned external perspectives, even when they challenge your own deeply held beliefs or emotions.
These kinds of failures, the blind spots, they often seem to come from leaders getting stuck on ways of thinking that worked before but don't anymore. These flawed mental models.
Mental models are essential. They're the shortcuts, the frameworks we use to make sense of a complex world. But they're just tools, right? They're approximations, not reality itself. And they can become outdated or flawed, especially if they're based on, say, a single bad experience that gets overgeneralized. Pixar ran into a big problem because of this.
You're talking about the issue with crediting writers, where some industry rules force them to give credit, maybe even undue credit, to writers whose drafts didn't ultimately work out.
Exactly. That whole administrative mess left such a scar, apparently, that it created this flawed mental model among their directors. The thinking became something like, ugh, dealing with outside writers is messy, and I might lose control or not get proper credit. Therefore, the only safe way is for me to write the first draft of my own movie.
Even if writing wasn't their core strength.
Right. Even if their genius was in visualization or leading the animation team or overall storytelling structure, not necessarily in crafting dialogue or hammering out a first draft screenplay. So you had directors feeling obligated to do this initial writing, leading to delays, frustration, maybe even passive resistance to bringing in expert writers who could have helped much earlier.
The model itself became the bottleneck. It wasted time and creative energy.
Totally. The tool became the enemy of progress. The crucial insight Catmull emphasizes is always remembering that distinction. The tool is not reality. A truly effective leader has to constantly question their own assumptions, audit their mental models, and be willing to discard the ones that aren't serving the current reality anymore. Especially when you have sharp, talented people around you who will see the flaws in the old model pretty quickly.
Okay, so we've got the leader's mindset sorted. Humility, candor, hiring smarter people. But that's not enough on its own. You need systems, right? Processes that actually make trust and accountability work day to day. Let's start with team basics. Lencioni talks about the dysfunctions of a team, and a big one is accountability. He argues you can't have accountability without clarity first.
That is absolutely foundational. In Patrick Lencioni's model, the 5 dysfunctions of a team, peer-to-peer accountability sits near the top of the pyramid. It's a high level of trust. But you can't get there. Teams can't and won't hold each other accountable if there isn't crystal clear shared understanding of what's expected. What are our goals? What does success look like? What did we actually agree to do?
Because otherwise you're asking someone to hold a teammate accountable for? What exactly? Something vague they never really bought into.
Precisely. It feels unfair, it creates resentment, and people just avoid it. So ambiguity is the enemy of accountability.
So the leader's job here is really about pushing for that clarity, making sure decisions get made and commitments are clear.
Yes. The leader has to drive for closure. They need to push the team to wrestle with issues, make decisions, and commit to schedules and standards. And critically, Lencioni warns against placing too high a premium on certainty or consensus.
Meaning, don't wait forever for everyone to agree or until you have perfect information.
Exactly. Waiting for 100% consensus often means delaying action until it's too late. It paralyzes the team. Sometimes the leader has to make the call, accept the risk, and say, okay, this is the direction, let's go. That act of decision-making, even without perfect consensus, creates the clarity needed for the team to then execute and hold each other accountable for that execution.
Okay, clarity is step one. Then we need to talk about tracking progress and giving feedback. The old annual performance review feels like a relic, especially for the kind of talent we're talking about.
Oh, completely. It's usually too little, too late, often backward-looking and universally dreaded. The modern alternative is continuous performance management. Think CFRs.
CFRs. Conversation, feedback, recognition.
That's it. It's a framework for ongoing two-way dialogue. It works incredibly well when paired with something like OKR's objectives and key results. OKRs provide the clarity. What are we trying to achieve? Objective, and how will we measure success? Key results. CFRs provide the continuous loop. How are we doing? What feedback do we have? How are we recognizing progress and effort along the way?
So the OKRs set the target, and the CFRs are the ongoing coaching and adjustments needed to hit it.
Exactly. They feed each other. The conversations, the feedback, the recognition, they should be happening frequently, embedded in the workflow, not saved up for a formal meeting once a year.
And what kind of insights should these continuous conversations be pulling out? It's not just a status update, right?
Definitely not. The goal is to tap into the collective intelligence, get insights from all over the organization, as John Doerr puts it, and measure what matters. The key questions these CFRs should surface are things like, okay, looking at this OKR, was the goal actually harder than we thought it would be? Is it stretching us too much or maybe not enough?
Or maybe, was it even the right goal in the first place, now that we're doing the work?
Yes, that's crucial adaptive intelligence. Is this still the right hill to be climbing? Is this work genuinely motivating the team? And based on all this real-time feedback, what do we do? Do we double down? Do we need to adjust our approach? Or do we need to make a bigger pivot?
Constant calibration based on reality.
That's the idea.
Okay, but what happens when, despite clear goals and ongoing conversations, things still go wrong? Someone misses a deadline repeatedly or violates a team norm. How do you handle accountability in that moment without destroying trust?
That's where having a structured approach is vital. The CPR acronym from Crucial Conversations is incredibly useful here. It helps you frame the accountability discussion correctly.
CPR, content, pattern, relationship. How does that work?
Okay, so the first time an issue occurs, you focus only on the content, the specific single event, the what and when. Example.
Right.
Hey, the report was due at 3 p.m. for the client call, and it came in at 6 p.m. What happened there? You address the specific instance, the here and now.
Keep it factual, focused on the event itself.
You're right. Now, if that same issue happens again, maybe a second or third time, you need to escalate the conversation. You move to pattern. Now you're talking about the recurring behavior. This is the third time in the past month the report has been significantly late. I'm noticing a pattern here, and it's starting to impact our team's deadlines.
So you connect the dots, show it's not just a one-off.
Exactly. And then, only if the pattern continues and it's causing a significant strain on trust or workflow do you escalate to the final level, relationship.
Okay, what does the relationship level conversation sound like?
This is where you address the impact of the persistent pattern on your working relationship, on trust, on confidence. This ongoing pattern of missed deadlines is making it difficult for me to rely on commitments, and it's affecting the trust within the team. We need to talk about how we fix this at a deeper level. By using this structure content, then pattern, then relationship, you address the issue at the right level, avoid overreacting to a first offense, and keep the focus as clear and objective as possible.
That makes sense. And there's a specific tip about language in these tough conversations too, wasn't there? Something about avoiding the word why.
Yes, crucial point, especially from coaching methodologies like the coaching habit. Asking, why did you do that? Or why were you late? Almost instantly triggers defensiveness. It sounds accusatory.
Puts people on the back foot immediately.
Totally. Instead, the advice is to adopt a stance of genuine curiosity. Ask questions that invite reflection, not justification. So instead of why were you late, you might ask, what got in the way of meeting the deadline? Or instead of why did you choose that approach, maybe what were you hoping to achieve with that course of action? Or walk me through your thinking on this.
It opens up the conversation instead of shutting it down. Respects their autonomy, assumes positive intent, even if the outcome wasn't right.
Exactly. It pulls them towards problem solving and self-awareness rather than defending past actions.
This whole system, the clarity, the continuous feedback, the structured accountability, it all seems to ladder up to this idea that the leader ultimately has to take responsibility for whether it works or not. Sounds like extreme ownership.
That's the capstone, really. The principle of extreme ownership, famously articulated by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin based on your Navy SEAL experience, is simple but profound. There are no bad teams, only bad leaders. The leader owns everything that happens under their command. If the team fails to perform, the leader didn't communicate clearly enough, didn't provide the right training or resources, didn't ensure understanding, the fault starts at the top.
That's a heavy burden, but incredibly empowering if you embrace it. How did they translate that into practical action, like ensuring mission clarity in a high-stakes situation?
Through incredibly rigorous, almost painstaking communication and verification. They didn't just deliver a briefing and assume everyone got it. The process involved leaders briefing the mission details in simple, clear language, cutting out jargon. Then they'd pause and ask questions of the team members to check initial comprehension.
Okay, it's standard enough so far.
But here's the non-negotiable step, the part that really transfers ownership. They would then have individual team members brief back key parts of the plan to the leader and the rest of the team.
Ah, so having the team members articulate their role, their understanding of the objectives in their own words.
Precisely. If someone briefs their part back incorrectly or vaguely, the leader knows immediately, I failed in my communication. It's not the troops' fault for not listening, it's my fault for not explaining it well enough. That verification loop ensures everyone doesn't just hear the plan, they understand it, they own your piece, and they understand how it fits into the bigger picture. That's how you build real clarity and shared ownership under pressure.
When you put all these pieces together, the humility, the candor, the service, the shared ownership, the kind of leadership we're describing feels fundamentally moral. It's moving away from that old idea of leadership as domination. And it's interesting because this isn't necessarily a brand new idea. You can find echoes of this perspective in really ancient texts about governing and ethics.
Absolutely. Look at the Tao Te Ching, attributed to Lao Tzu. There's a passage that draws this stark contrast between the ethical way and, well, typical human behavior, especially around power and resources. Lao Tzu says the way of heaven is like bending a bow. It naturally corrects imbalance. It brings down what is high and lifts up what is low. It takes from those who have too much and gives to those who have not enough.
It seeks equilibrium, fairness, but the conventional human way, as he calls it.
Does the exact opposite. It takes from those who don't have enough to pile even more onto those who already have plenty. The truly wise leader, the one aligned with the Tao or the Way, acts effectively but doesn't claim ownership of the results. They achieve things but don't boast. They use their position to serve and elevate the whole system, not just to accumulate personal status or wealth.
That feels incredibly relevant to the discussion about talent demanding purpose and fairness from organizations today.
It is. It's a moral framework for leadership that resonates with the need for sustainable, trust-based systems.
And we see a similar, maybe more pragmatic take on this in Xenophon's Cyropedia, right? His account of Cyrus the Great. Cyrus specifically rejects ruling through fear, especially fear of his own best people.
Yeah, that's a fascinating strategic insight from antiquity. Cyrus recognized that trying to disarm or intimidate his most capable commanders, his most powerful warriors, simply because he feared they might rebel, well, that was the surest way to actually cause instability and potentially lose the empire. So instead of coercion, he chose a strategy based on building genuine partnership. He actively worked to win the friendship and loyalty of his key warriors.
To make them more devoted to him personally and to the shared mission than they might even be to each other.
Exactly. He understood that deep loyalty, earned through respect and mutual benefit, was a far more powerful and stable foundation for his rule than fear or forced compliance could ever be. It demonstrates the power of voluntary partnership, even in a military context centuries ago.
This idea, winning friendship, choosing interdependence, it loops right back to Covey's framework, doesn't it? He says independent self-mastery, living by principles, that's a prerequisite.
That's the foundation. You have to achieve independence first. You need that inner core of self-reliance and integrity. Only then can you make the conscious choice for interdependence, the choice to build those rich, synergistic relationships where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, where 1 + 7 = 3 or 10 or 100.
And only independent people can truly make that choice.
Right, because true partnership requires vulnerability, trust, sharing responsibility. You can only do that effectively if you're coming from a place of inner security, not neediness or dependence. And that partnership, that trust, is built deposit by deposit in what Covey calls the emotional bank account, the EBA.
The EBA, that's the measure of trust in a relationship. So if the account is high, filled with deposits of respect, kindness, integrity, keeping promises, what does that enable organizationally?
It enables incredible speed and efficiency, ironically. Win-win solutions become possible. When the EBA is high, a trusted partner, like a key employee, will often support a leader's decision, even a complex or difficult one, without needing every single detail explained. They trust the leader's judgment and intent because the relationship capital is there.
But if the EBA is low, overdrawn,
Then every interaction is viewed with suspicion. Every request requires detailed justification. You get pushback, resistance, minimal compliance, or worse, that malicious obedience we talked about, or even outright sabotage. You simply cannot build a high-performing, adaptable organization on a foundation of low trust.
And maintaining that high EBA, building those long-term relationships, requires leaders to look beyond just the next quarter's results, doesn't it? To have a longer time horizon.
Absolutely. It requires a long-term perspective, the kind Katharine Graham observed was often more prevalent in family-owned companies compared to publicly traded ones driven by quarterly earnings pressure. This longer view is essential for making wise strategic bets, especially when it comes to integrating new technologies.
Right, the Good to Great research had a really interesting finding on technology, didn't it? It wasn't about being first with every new gadget.
No, not at all. They found that the truly great, enduring companies were rarely the pioneers of technology for its own sake. They didn't jump on every fad. Instead, they became pioneers in the application of carefully selected technologies that directly amplified their core strategic concept, what Collins called their hedgehog concept.
So technology is an accelerator, but only if you're already pointed in the right direction. It can't create momentum on its own.
Precisely. If you don't have clarity on your core strategy, what you can be the best in the world at, what drives your economic engine, what you're passionate about, then throwing fancy technology at the problem will just help you run faster in the wrong direction, or maybe just run mediocrity into the ground more quickly.
We saw this play out dramatically with IBM's turnaround under Lou Gerstner in the 90s, right? They were stuck in their old model.
Totally stuck. IBM's legacy was built on selling proprietary boxes, hardware, software that often didn't integrate well even with each other, let alone with competitors' products. They were essentially forcing the customer to be the system's integrator.
And the market, the talent, they were moving past that model.
Gerstner saw that clearly. He made a huge, painful, but necessary pivot. He shifted IBM's focus away from selling products to solving the customer's business problems using integrated solutions. And crucially, this meant using the best technology available from any source, even competitors, not just IBM's own proprietary stuff.
That required a massive cultural shift towards service, towards partnership, toward looking externally rather than just internally.
It was a profound strategic and arguably moral choice. It prioritized the customer's success, aligning with that way of heaven idea, and building true partnerships, like Cyrus winning friendship, over protecting the internal ego tied to IBM's proprietary past. It was about serving the market need, not dictating terms.
So wrapping this all up, the evidence seems clear. The war for talent really is over. Talent won. Because the most capable, adaptable, creative people, the ones organizations desperately need in this complex world, they're demanding different kinds of environments.
An environment's defined by that radical candor, by clear accountability, but also psychological safety, by leaders who practice genuine humility and are committed to continuous learning and improvement for themselves and their teams.
It's fundamentally a demand for more ethical, more human-centered leadership.
It is. And maybe that leads us to one final provocative thought for you to consider, drawn from another ancient text, the Bhagavad Gita. In the Gita, the warrior Arjuna is distressed about his duty, about having to fight. Krishna advises him not to simply withdraw from action, not to just sit aloof making a show of detachment. He must act, fulfill his duty, but do so with the right consciousness, with dedication, purpose, without attachment to the fruits of his actions.
Okay, so how does that connect to the modern talent landscape?
Well, if today's highly skilled employee, the liberated soul, perhaps, of the modern workforce, now holds significant power, the power to demand better conditions, better leadership, more autonomy, is the ultimate expression of that power simply to demand less work, or easier work? Or is it, perhaps, echoing Arjuna's call to purposeful action, a demand for more meaningful work?
Work that aligns with a purpose they genuinely believe in, where they can dedicate their full, liberated capabilities.
Could that be the highest demand of all? The need for work that allows talented individuals to connect their hard-won self-reliance and skill to a contribution that truly matters. That might be the next frontier for leadership in this new era where talent has indeed won.
A lot to think about there. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us.